"Daddy!" The twin girls screamed, rushing past security and clinging to the billionaire's legs. One black, one white. The entire lobby froze. Reporters gasped. His board members stared. And the billionaire CEO, Michael Harrington, felt his world collapse in a single word. The Manhattan skyline glittered like a crown of glass and steel under the morning sun. From the top floor of the Harrington Tower, the tallest skyscraper in Midtown, Michael Harrington looked down at the city he had conquered. 38 years old, founder and CEO of Harrington Tech Global. He was the kind of man newspapers called a visionary and rivals called a shark. Inside his penthouse office, nothing was out of place. The Italian leather chairs gleamed, the glass desk shone, and the shelves displayed awards, not family photos. Michael's world was built on order and control. Every second of his life was calculated. Meetings stacked in 15-minute blocks, assistants whispering updates through earpieces, chauffeurs waiting with engines running below. To the outside world, he was invincible. Forbes had just named him the most influential CEO in America. He was admired by young entrepreneurs, envied by Wall Street executives, feared by competitors who had seen him dismantle billion-dollar companies without blinking. Yet the one thing no one ever saw, the part carefully hidden behind the polished suits and perfect smiles, was that Michael Harrington was utterly, painfully alone. He had no wife, no children, no family photographs on his desk, only the reflection of a man who told himself he didn't need those things. At night, when the skyscrapers went dark and his city of steel slept, the silence in his penthouse echoed louder than any applause he had ever received. But Michael had grown used to burying that silence. He buried it under work, under success, under women who came and went, attracted to the glow of his wealth, but never staying long enough to matter. His life was structured, calculated, impenetrable. Or so he thought. That morning, as he signed off on a billion-dollar merger, his assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, stepped into the office with her usual efficiency. "Mr. Harrington," she said, placing a stack of documents on his desk. "Your schedule is full. Interviews with CNBC, board meeting at noon, gala preparations at 6. Also," she hesitated, which was unusual for her, "something came for you. Hand-delivered." Michael raised an eyebrow. "From whom?" She shook her head. "No sender." Claire placed a single white envelope on his desk. It looked out of place among the sleek contracts and polished binders. Unmarked, plain, almost fragile in contrast to the empire of power surrounding it. Michael picked it up, turning it in his hand. No logo, no handwriting, just his name, Michael Harrington. Something about the simplicity of it unsettled him. He slid his finger under the seal and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no signature, just one line written in neat, deliberate script. "The past never stays buried." Michael stared at the words, his jaw tightening. For a moment, he thought of another life, a life he had long locked away, a memory of crowded diners, laughter, and the soft voice of a girl who once believed in him before the billions, before the suits, before Harrington Tower. He pushed the thought aside, folding the letter sharply. "Find out who sent this," he ordered Claire. His voice clipped. "Yes, sir." She whisked out of the room. But as Michael turned back to the glass wall overlooking New York, the words echoed in his mind, refusing to be dismissed. The past never stays buried. And somewhere in the noise of the city below, fate was already moving toward him. Small footsteps, innocent voices, and the one word that would soon shatter his carefully built empire, Daddy. 6 years earlier, New York looked different to Michael Harrington. The skyscrapers still pierced the sky, but from the cracked sidewalks where he stood, they felt more like walls than trophies. He was just another young man in a worn suit, juggling resumes that never got callbacks and odd jobs that barely paid the rent. Michael had arrived in the city with dreams of making it big in technology, certain he would one day change the world. Instead, he was changing light bulbs in office buildings, washing dishes in greasy kitchens, and crashing on the pull-out couch of a friend who eventually told him he had to figure things out somewhere else. It was during that low stretch of his life that he first saw Aaliyah Carter. She worked a late shift at a small diner on 145th Street in Harlem, The kind of place where the smell of baking grease clung to the walls and the neon sign outside flickered between open and pen. Aaliyah wore the plain burgundy waitress uniform, but nothing could hide the warmth in her eyes or the way her laughter filled the room like sunlight. Michael noticed her on a rainy evening when he ducked into the diner for shelter, soaked through from a failed interview and too broke to buy more than a cup of coffee. She approached his table with a smile that didn't judge his wet clothes or the nervous way he clutched his resume folder. "Rough night?" she asked, placing the coffee in front of him. "You could say that," he muttered, his voice low. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Coffee's on me. You look like you need it more than you can afford it." For the first time in weeks, Michael smiled. That small act of kindness broke through the heavy cloud of failure hovering over him. Over the following weeks, he found excuses to return to that diner. Sometimes he ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. Sometimes he just nursed a coffee for hours. But always, he stayed to talk to Aaliyah. She told him about her life, how she had grown up in Brooklyn, how she dreamed of studying nursing, how she worked 2 jobs to help her younger brother through school. She was real, honest. Unlike the polished, pretentious women Michael would meet years later in high society. Michael began sharing his dreams with her too. How he wanted to build something bigger than himself. How he sketched designs for apps and devices late into the night. Aaliyah didn't laugh at his impossible ambitions. She believed him. "You're going to make it, Michael," she said one evening, wiping down the counter while he sketched an idea on a napkin. "I don't know how, but I can see it in you. You're not meant to stay stuck forever." It was that belief, her quiet, unwavering faith, that pulled him closer to her. Their friendship grew into something more, slow and tender, like a spark catching fire. By the time summer rolled around, Michael was spending more nights in Aaliyah's small apartment than in his own dingy room. One July evening, the city air thick with heat, they sat on her fire escape eating ice cream straight from the carton. Below them, kids played in the spray of a busted fire hydrant, their laughter echoing up the brick walls. Aaliyah rested her head on his shoulder. Michael felt, for the first time in years, like he belonged somewhere. That night, under the hum of box fans and the glow of streetlights, their connection deepened into something neither of them could take back. A single night that bound their lives in ways Michael couldn't yet imagine. But ambition is a cruel master. Weeks later, when an investor finally took interest in one of Michael's ideas, he didn't hesitate. He packed up, left Harlem, and moved downtown, chasing opportunity with relentless focus. He never told Aaliyah goodbye, never called, never looked back. As the city lights swallowed him, he told himself it was necessary. Success demanded sacrifice, but somewhere, buried beneath his hunger for power, he knew he had left behind more than just a girl. He had left behind the one person who had seen him for who he truly was. And Aaliyah, left alone with the memory of that summer night, would soon discover that his departure carried more weight than either of them had ever imagined. Brooklyn in the early morning carried a rhythm of its own, the rumble of the subway beneath the streets, the hiss of buses pulling into stops, the distant honks from impatient cab drivers. Inside a small third-floor apartment, tucked between a laundromat and a barbershop, Aaliyah Carter woke before dawn, just as she had every day for the past 6 years. Her alarm buzzed, and she silenced it quickly before it could wake the girls. The twins, Amara and Chloe, were sprawled across the bed she shared with them, their little bodies tangled in blankets. Even in sleep, they were inseparable. Amara, her dark curls wild against the pillow, had one arm draped protectively across Chloe, whose pale blonde hair glowed faintly in the sliver of morning light that cut through the blinds. To anyone who saw them for the first time, the twins looked like they belonged to 2 different families, one black, one white. But to Aaliyah, they were a single miracle, 2 halves of the same heart. She slipped quietly into the kitchen, where a stack of unpaid bills sat like a storm cloud on the table. She opened the fridge. Half a carton of milk, leftover rice in a container, and some apples. She sighed, whispering to herself, "We'll make it stretch." Aaliyah worked double shifts at a local grocery store, sometimes cleaning offices at night when the bills piled too high. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept the lights on and food on the table barely. She never complained aloud, Never let the twins see the weight pressing down on her. To them, she was just Mom, the one who made pancakes into funny shapes, the one who braided Amara's hair with beads that clicked when she ran, the one who sang Chloe to sleep when her nightmares came. By 7, the girls were awake, bouncing around the small apartment with boundless energy. "Mommy, look." Chloe twirled in her mismatched socks, giggling. "I'm a ballerina." Amara stomped beside her, hands on her hips. "And I'm a superhero. I'm gonna save you from falling." Aaliyah laughed, though her eyes were tired. "My two little stars," she said, crouching down to hug them both. "Always together." The girls were different in personality as much as in looks. Amara was bold, loud, and full of questions that never ended. Chloe was quieter, observant, with a softness that often surprised Aaliyah. Yet, despite their differences, they were inseparable. If one cried, the other comforted her. If one laughed, the other echoed. As she dressed them for school, Chloe tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy, do we have a daddy?" Aaliyah froze for half a second, the brush still tangled in Amara's hair. It wasn't the first time they had asked, but it always hit her like a bruise pressed too hard. "You have me," she said softly, kissing Chloe's forehead. "And that's enough." "But what about him?" Amara pushed, her little voice stubborn. "Other kids have daddies." Aaliyah looked at them both, one pair of deep brown eyes, one pair of clear blue. They were so different, yet so much alike. How could she explain to 6-year-olds the pain of abandonment? That the man she once believed in had vanished without a word? That he had left her to raise them alone, while chasing dreams that eventually turned him into someone untouchable? She didn't. Instead, she gathered them close, lowering her voice to a whisper. "Your daddy, he's out there. He's a good man. I know he is. One day, maybe you'll meet him. But right now, all that matters is that you have each other, and you have me." The girls didn't press further. To them, their mother's word was enough for now. They hugged her tightly, small arms wrapping around her waist. Aaliyah held them, breathing them in, knowing that they were her reason to keep fighting, to keep pushing through every exhaustion and every bill that threatened to crush her. That night, after the twins were asleep, Aaliyah sat by their bedside, watching their chests rise and fall in perfect rhythm. She reached out, brushing a curl from Amara's forehead, then smoothing Chloe's pale hair. "You're my miracles," she whispered. "Even if he never comes back, you're enough for me." Her voice cracked, but she swallowed the tears. She never allowed herself to cry in front of them. They deserved strength, not sorrow. And so, like every night before, she tucked her heartache into silence, kissed them gently, and turned out the light. But deep inside, where the quiet ache never left, she wondered how long she could keep their questions at bay. Because she knew, sooner or later, the twins would want more than whispers. They would want the truth. The Carter apartment was rarely quiet, especially with two 6-year-olds running through it like a whirlwind. That Saturday morning was no different. Amara was sprawled on the floor with crayons, sketching what she claimed was a rocket ship, while Chloe sat cross-legged beside her, carefully piecing together a puzzle of a city skyline. "Chloe," Amara suddenly said, lifting her head, "why don't we have a daddy?" Chloe paused, pressing a puzzle piece into place. "Mommy said we have her. That's enough." Amara frowned. "But everybody in school has a daddy. Remember Kayla's daddy came to pick her up in a big truck? And Marcus's daddy always comes to the park and pushes him on the swings. Why not us?" Chloe hesitated, biting her lip. She had thought the same thing, though she was gentler in her questions than her sister. Maybe our daddy's far away." Amara's eyes narrowed in that stubborn way Aaliyah knew too well. "No, Mommy's hiding something. I can tell." Their mother had always given them the same soft answers, never angry, never detailed. "You have me. You have each other." But Amara's bold little heart wasn't satisfied with half-truths. Later that day, while their mother was folding laundry in the bedroom, the twins started rummaging through a stack of old magazines in the living room. Amara flipped pages quickly, restless, while Chloe lingered over the pictures. And then Chloe froze. "Amara," she whispered, her finger pressing against the glossy page. Amara scooted closer. The magazine cover showed a tall man in a tailored navy suit, standing in front of a glass skyscraper. The headline read, "Michael Harrington, the billionaire CEO changing the world." Both girls leaned closer, their breaths fogging the page. His smile was confident, his eyes sharp. But to Chloe, it was something else that made her chest tighten. "Amara," she said softly. "Look at his eyes. They're like mine." Amara's jaw dropped. "They are." Her little hand touched the page, tracing the sharp blue eyes that mirrored her sister's. Then she looked at the man's face again, her young mind racing. "Chloe, what if he's our daddy?" Chloe's heart skipped. She had never dared think it, but the resemblance was there, clearer than anything she'd ever noticed before. She nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think he is." The two sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the fridge filling the room. Then Amara's determination kicked in. "Then we have to go find him." Chloe's eyes widened. "But," Mommy said. "Mommy doesn't want to tell us, so we'll do it ourselves." Amara's voice carried the kind of certainty only a child could muster. "We'll find him, and when we do, he'll see us and say, 'Yes, you're my daughters.' You'll see." Chloe hugged the magazine to her chest. "But he's a billionaire. He lives in that big shiny building. How are we going to get there?" Amara shrugged like it was the simplest thing in the world. "We'll figure it out. We're twins. We can do anything if we stick together." That night, while Aaliyah tucked them into bed, both girls lay awake staring at the ceiling. Amara whispered into the dark, her hand reaching across the small gap to squeeze Chloe's. "We're going to find him. Promise." Chloe squeezed back, her quiet voice trembling with both fear and hope. "Okay, we'll find Daddy." They didn't know how or when, but in their innocent hearts, the decision had already been made. And while Aaliyah drifted into exhausted sleep in the next room, unaware, her daughter's wide eyes gleamed with the kind of determination that only children could hold. Pure, unstoppable, and about to change everything. The Harrington Tech Annual Gala was the event of the season, held at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel in Midtown Manhattan. It was a spectacle of wealth and influence. Limousines lined the street outside, spilling out men in tuxedos and women in shimmering gowns. Paparazzi flashes lit up the night, each snap echoing Michael Harrington's empire. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers dripped with light, and a string quartet played softly while servers floated past with trays of champagne. Every corner buzzed with conversation, investors, politicians, celebrities, all eager to rub shoulders with the billionaire whose company had reshaped the world of technology. Michael arrived with his usual precision, stepping onto the red carpet with the controlled smile of a man accustomed to cameras. Reporters called his name, microphones shoved forward. "Mr. Harrington, what's next for Harrington Tech?" "Mr. Harrington, any comments on the new merger?" He answered with practiced ease, his voice smooth, authoritative. To them, he was untouchable, the man who had everything. Inside, though, that letter he'd received earlier in the week lingered in his thoughts like a shadow. The past never stays buried. He brushed it off as paranoia, but some part of him couldn't shake the unease. Meanwhile, across the ballroom, Aaliyah Carter adjusted the stiff collar of her server's uniform, balancing a tray of hors d'oeuvres. She hadn't even realized the event was for Harrington Tech when she picked up the shift. To her, it was just another paycheck, another night away from her daughters. She kept her head down, avoiding the polished faces that laughed and clinked glasses. The contrast between her life and theirs was sharp enough to sting. But what Aaliyah didn't know was that Amara and Chloe had followed her. The girls had begged her not to leave that night, clinging to her legs as she hurried to get ready. Aaliyah, frazzled and late, had promised she'd be back before they knew it. When she left, they sat on the couch with wide eyes and whispered plans. Amara, bold as ever, convinced Chloe that this was their chance. If Mommy was working at the billionaire's party, then maybe, just maybe, Daddy would be there too. So, with childlike determination, they slipped on their little sneakers, held hands, and trailed behind her through the busy Brooklyn streets until they reached the subway. Chloe had carried the magazine tucked into her backpack, like a treasure map. Hours later, The twins stood outside the glowing hotel, their eyes wide as they watched the parade of glittering gowns and flashing lights. To them, it looked like a castle, the kind of place where a father would be. They slipped past the distracted doorman, small enough to weave through the crowd unnoticed. Their sneakers squeaked softly against the marble floors as they entered the lobby, their mouths dropping open at the sight of towering flower arrangements, golden staircases, and men in tuxedos with glasses of champagne. "This is like a fairy tale," Chloe whispered, clutching Amara's hand tightly. Amara's eyes sparkled. "No, this is real. He's here. I know it." Unaware that her daughters were wandering into a world they didn't belong in, Aaliyah carried her tray through the crowd, nodding politely when guests barely glanced at her. Her heart ached as she watched fathers dancing with daughters in sparkling dresses, but she forced herself to focus on the job. At the far end of the ballroom, Michael stood beneath a massive banner with the words Harrington Tech, building the future. He raised his glass as cameras flashed, every movement rehearsed, every smile calculated. And just a few floors below, in the glittering hotel lobby, two little girls clutched each other's hands, their wide eyes scanning the crowd, their hearts pounding with excitement and fear. "Chloe," Amara whispered, tugging her sister forward, "look." Across the lobby, standing tall and commanding as the crowd bent toward him, was the man from the magazine cover. The same sharp jawline, the same piercing eyes. The man whose face lived in their innocent dreams. Chloe's breath caught in her throat. "It's him." Amara squeezed her hand tighter, her small voice filled with awe. "That's Daddy." The gala was already electric. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above the ballroom. Journalists snapped photos of New York's elite, and Michael Harrington stood at the center of it all, his tailored suit immaculate, his signature cold composure intact. He was every inch the billionaire CEO, untouchable, commanding, larger than life. But then chaos. Two tiny figures slipped past the security barricade. Reporters frowned. Flashes paused for a split second before resuming in a frenzy. Gasps rippled across the crowd as two little girls, one with soft golden curls, the other with dark braids tied with pink ribbons, darted across the marble floor. Before anyone could stop them, they reached him. Michael felt it before he fully saw it. Two small sets of arms wrapping tightly around his legs. He looked down, confused, his jaw tightening, and then his world cracked open. Two pairs of eyes stared up at him. Eyes he knew. Eyes he had once seen in another lifetime. Amara spoke first, her voice ringing across the hall, bold and certain. "Daddy." Chloe followed, quieter but no less piercing. "We found you, Daddy." The entire ballroom froze. Reporters surged forward, cameras firing like gunshots. The once glittering gala descended into chaos. His board members stiffened, investors exchanged sharp glances, whispers growing louder. Security guards hovered, unsure whether to pull the children away or wait for his command. Michael couldn't move. His breath caught in his throat as recognition slammed into him like a storm. Their faces, so different yet the same, one reflecting his sharp jawline, the other carrying Aaliyah's warmth. His hands twitched at his sides. His carefully constructed life, his empire of steel and glass, suddenly felt fragile, like it could shatter at a single touch. "Mr. Harrington, what is this?" one reporter shouted. "Are those your children?" another barked. "Explain this, sir. Is this your scandal?" The twins clung tighter, oblivious to the chaos. Chloe looked up with wide, innocent eyes. "Daddy, we came to find you." The weight of the room pressed down on him. Every camera was aimed at his face. His board demanded answers with their stares. The press smelled blood. Michael Harrington, the billionaire who always had control, stood frozen, trapped between his past and present, his secret and the world. And for the first time in years, fear flickered in his eyes. The room roared with questions. The twins refused to let go. And Michael knew nothing would ever be the same. The ballroom was in chaos. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, and whispers rippled like wildfire. Every pair of eyes burned into Michael Harrington, waiting for him to crack. But Michael's instinct for survival roared louder than his shock. His jaw tightened, his voice steady but ice cold. "I don't know these children." Gasps echoed. The words sliced through the noise, leaving the twins frozen in confusion. Amara's little brows furrowed, while Chloe's lips trembled. Still, they held on to his legs, refusing to let go. Aaliyah, standing near the serving trays, went pale. Her tray of champagne glasses rattled in her trembling hands before shattering on the marble floor. Every head turned. The staff, the investors, the media, they all saw her. Security moved in, gently pulling the girls back. The flashes of cameras followed their every movement. Aaliyah's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to scream, to grab her daughters and run, but her legs carried her forward instead. Moments later, Michael ordered the madness contained. He motioned to security. Private room. Now. His voice was low, clipped, desperate for control. The girls, still clinging to their mother, were ushered away. Soon, the heavy wooden door of a private lounge slammed shut, shutting out the roar of the press. Inside, silence cracked like thunder. Michael spun on Aaliyah, his eyes sharp, his face flushed with anger and fear. "What the hell are you doing here?" Her own composure snapped. Tears blurred her vision, but her voice rose, sharp and cutting. "What am I doing here? You left me, Michael. You left us." The twins huddled on a velvet couch, watching the storm between their parents with wide, frightened eyes. Michael's breath hitched. He paced, running a hand through his hair, his polished mask crumbling. "This is insane. You think you can just show up and—" He stopped, his voice cracking, the weight of the truth pressing against his denial. No, this can't be real." Aaliyah stepped closer, her voice breaking with years of swallowed pain. "You knew, Michael. You knew what we had. And when I told you I was pregnant, you disappeared. Do you have any idea what it's like raising 2 children alone? Do you have any idea what they've been through?" Michael turned away, clenching his fists, shame flickering in his eyes, but smothered by disbelief. "You expect me to believe this? That they're mine?" Her voice dropped, raw and shaking. "Look at them." He hesitated. His eyes, unwilling yet drawn, shifted to the girls. Amara's fiery spirit, Chloe's quiet gaze. It was like watching his past and present mirrored back at him. His chest tightened, but still, denial clung to him like armor. "No," he whispered hoarsely, shaking his head. "Not without proof. I need proof." Aaliyah's tears spilled freely now, her voice trembling but resolute. "You already know the truth, Michael. You see it every time they call you Daddy. But if proof is what it takes, then proof you'll get." The tension hung thick, the room suffocating. Michael stood frozen, torn between the empire he built and the family he abandoned, his denial cracking at the edges. The twins looked between them, innocence colliding with a storm they couldn't understand. And in that fragile silence, one thing became painfully clear. There would be no turning back. The Harrington Tower boardroom, usually a fortress of calm authority, was electric with tension. The long mahogany table gleamed under the harsh lights, but every face around it was grim. Michael sat at the head, his back straight, hands clasped tightly together. The man who once commanded every room with effortless authority now looked like a defendant on trial. A courier entered quietly, sliding a sealed envelope across the table. The weight of it was unbearable. Michael's fingers hovered, trembling, before he tore it open. His eyes scanned the first lines. His breath caught. 99.9% probability of paternity. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Board members exchanged sharp looks, some with thinly veiled disgust, others with opportunistic curiosity. Michael's perfect mask slipped. His empire, carefully built on control and image, was cracking under the undeniable truth. "They're his," one board member whispered to another. "2 children, hidden all these years? What does that say about his judgment?" another hissed. Michael slammed the papers shut, but the damage was done. His legacy, the story he had sold to the world, was unraveling faster than he could grasp. Outside the tower, the media circus exploded. Headlines blared across every screen. Harrington's secret children revealed. DNA test confirms Billionaire's shocking paternity. Reporters camped outside his gates. His stock wavered. His investors questioned his credibility. And then came the hardest blow. Not from the press, not from the board, but from the two small voices that mattered most. The twins sat with Aaliyah in a quiet corner of the penthouse, their innocence a painful contrast to the chaos outside. They looked up at him with wide, hopeful eyes. Chloe's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Daddy, do you love us?" Amara followed quickly, her tone sharper, almost defiant. "Or are we just a mistake to you?" Michael's chest tightened. For once, he had no polished response, no corporate armor. His throat burned, words choking him. He crouched down, meeting their gaze. His lips trembled, but nothing came out. The billionaire titan, who once ruled boardrooms and bent markets to his will, was powerless before the honesty of two children. Tears threatened to break past his control. He looked at Aaliyah, her eyes wet but unflinching, silently demanding he face the truth he had denied for so long. And in that moment, something inside Michael shattered. The empire, the headlines, the whispers, they all faded under the weight of two little girls who just wanted their father. For the first time in decades, Michael Harrington wasn't a CEO. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't untouchable. He was simply Daddy. The penthouse was silent, save for the relentless buzz of Michael's phone, calls from investors, emails from lawyers, statements drafted by PR teams. But none of it mattered anymore. His empire, the crown jewel of Wall Street, suddenly felt like an empty shell. His fiancée, Veronica Sterling, the socialite who had adorned his arm at every gala, stood across the room, a magazine in hand with the headline plastered in bold. Harrington's hidden family, the billionaire's double life. Her designer heels clicked against the marble floor as she crossed to him, fury radiating off her. "You humiliated me," she hissed, waving the magazine like a weapon. "Do you know what people are saying? I can't be tied to this." Michael's jaw clenched. "Veronica, don't bother." She tore off the diamond engagement ring and let it fall to the floor, the sound sharp, final. "You're finished to me." And just like that, she walked out, slamming the door behind her. Michael stood frozen, staring at the ring glinting coldly on the marble. The silence that followed was deafening. For years, he had thought Veronica was his partner, elegant, flawless, the perfect complement to his empire. But her exit revealed what she had always been, a status symbol. Hollow, conditional, disposable. For the first time, he realized everything he had built, all the wealth, the towers, the headlines, meant nothing if it couldn't anchor love, if it couldn't give him family. That night, rain drenched the city, heavy and unforgiving. Michael found himself standing outside Aaliyah's modest building in Harlem, stripped of his chauffeur, his umbrella, his armor. His $1,000 suit clung to his skin, ruined, but he didn't care. The cold seeped into his bones, but it was nothing compared to the emptiness gnawing at his chest. He looked up at her window, dimly lit, and for the first time in decades, the billionaire felt small, human. When the door finally opened, Aaliyah stood there, startled to find him there in the storm. She crossed her arms, her expression a shield. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her tone clipped, protective. Michael's voice cracked, raw and stripped of all pride. "I lost everything tonight. But the truth is, I've been lost for years. And I don't want to be lost anymore." Aaliyah hesitated, her eyes narrowing. "You humiliated me. You denied them. Do you know what that did to them?" Michael's lips trembled as his eyes filled with tears. The man who once commanded Wall Street now knelt in the pouring rain, his knees on the cold concrete. "I'm begging you," he whispered. His hand shook as he reached for hers, but stopped short, afraid. "Not for my empire, not for redemption in the public eye, but for them, for Chloe, for Amara, for you. Please, let me try to be the man I should have been all along." Aaliyah's breath caught. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but not like this. Not with him broken, soaked, stripped of everything but sincerity. Behind her, two small faces appeared at the doorway. Chloe and Amara in their pajamas, peering curiously at the man kneeling in the rain. "Daddy," Chloe whispered. Michael's heart clenched. He looked at them, rain mixing with his tears. "Yes, baby. Daddy's here. And this time, I'm not leaving." The storm raged around them, but in that moment, something shifted. Michael Harrington, once untouchable, had finally bowed. Not to the market, not to the board, but to love. The rain had stopped by the time Aaliyah let him inside. Her small apartment, though modest, radiated warmth. The scent of baked chicken and collard greens filled the air. The twins, Chloe and Amara, hovered near the kitchen table, whispering to each other, their curious eyes never leaving Michael. He stood awkwardly near the doorway, drenched and disheveled, the billionaire aura gone. For the first time, he wasn't Michael Harrington the tycoon. He was just a man desperate to be a father. Aaliyah set plates on the table, her expression guarded but softer than before. "You should eat. You look like you haven't touched a meal all day." Michael swallowed hard, his voice quiet. "I haven't. Not since everything fell apart." There was a long silence as he sat at the table, across from the twins. He tried to smile, but it faltered under the weight of their wide, searching eyes. Amara broke the silence, her small voice trembling. "Mommy says you're our dad, but you didn't want us." Michael's chest tightened. He reached across the table, his hand shaking. "No, sweetheart. That's not true. I was a fool. I let fear, pride, and the world blind me to what really mattered." His eyes brimmed with tears as he looked between them. "Yes, I am your daddy, and I'll never leave again. Not for business, not for pride, not for anything." The words hung in the air, raw and heavy. Chloe's lip quivered, and Amara's eyes filled with tears. Then, as if a dam had broken, both girls scrambled from their chairs and rushed into his arms. Michael caught them, pulling them close, his tears mingling with their laughter and sobs. He buried his face in their hair, whispering, "I'm here. I'm never going anywhere again. I promise you." Aaliyah stood at the sink, watching the scene unfold. For years, she had carried the burden alone, raising them, protecting them, loving them enough for two parents. Now, as she saw Michael on his knees, clinging to their daughters like a drowning man clinging to life, she felt something stir. Not forgiveness yet, but hope. Later that evening, they sat down together for dinner. It was simple, not the lavish spreads Michael was used to, but it felt richer than any banquet hall. Between bites, he listened to Chloe chatter about school, to Amara's shy jokes, to Aaliyah's gentle scolding when they giggled too loudly. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about markets or boardrooms. He was thinking about them. As the night ended, he rose from the table, the twins clinging to each of his hands. Aaliyah stood by the doorway, her eyes meeting his. She didn't smile, not fully, but there was a softness there, an unspoken acknowledgement. Michael squeezed the twins' hands and whispered, This is what I should have fought for all along." In the end, wealth can build towers that scrape the sky, but it cannot build a family. Legacies are not written in stock reports or gilded empires. They are written in love, in the hands we hold, the promises we keep, and the hearts that never let go.